If you look at the rise of the British Empire, wherever you have an Englishman, he has a quarterback. In his, if you use the American metaphor, you have a Scotsman. The Scottish were always the partners of the English, wherever the English went to govern. They were the administrators in India. Most of the administrators in India and in Africa and the Caribbean were Scotsmen. See, the Jews were like that with the Arabs. They were cousins. Today, if you tell people, they don't want to hear that. On both sides of the fence. They forgot that history. And in Spain, at the height of Muslim power in Spain, when Europeans come to study in Spain, in Toledo, in Granada, Cordova, it was more difficult for the European students, Gregory of Cremona, Roger Williams, all of those guys who came to study from Europe in Spain. They would have to hire a Jew who knows Arabic. And he's the go-between them and a Spaniard who knows Latin. Because the educated German or the educated Englishman or the educated Burgundian, they are not as they are now, they are different kingdoms. All those people who came to study would find themselves gaining this new knowledge, which was the inheritance of the Greeks, preserved in Arabic, translated to them by the Jewish scholar, and then the Spanish will get it from the Jew in Spanish and then give it to them in Latin. That's how they got it. And that's one of the reasons why, there are a lot of books about this. You read some of the books by people like Ada Bosserman, like the international cultural relations of that period. This is the way it was. And so, but you see, the creation of the State of Israel and the tension that is going on now has forced people to rewrite history. And you have now new narratives that are written by both the Arabs and some of the Muslims, and then you also have, on the Jewish side, they're writing, because of Zionism and because of Arab nationalism, they're revising history. But, all you get to do is just go and get the old texts and show it to them. They can see books that were written by Jews and Arabs at that time, and you just present it to them, they look at it, they can see that they engage in revisionism. But the same thing happened in Russia after communism. You begin to revise according to communist lines. You revise the text based on communism, because you're a Marxist. So you write history from a Marxist point of view. And you play this sleight of hand, because that's what scholars can be magicians too. They can play with this sleight of hand in terms of rewriting. So you develop a master narrative which gradually just surf on the sidelines things that were central. And this is precisely what happened. So when you look at the relationship between the Islamic world and the Western world, what you have to recognize is that the founding of the Americas by Columbus was a major turning point in world history. The last 500 years redefined the relationship between the Western people and the rest of the world. But it defined the relationship between the Western people we call the Westerners now, and the Muslim world. And it also redefined the relationship within this geographic zone itself. How? When Columbus set sail for the New World, simultaneously, Jews and Muslims were being kicked out of Spain. One of the great ironies I always tell my students is that the ship of sorrow, that was the name of the ship that was taking the Jews out of Spain. The ship of sorrow, kicking the Muslims and the Jews. Most of them landed in North Africa. Some of the Jews went to Holland. That's why Holland has been the most liberal place among the European countries. They ended up in Holland, many of the Jews. People like Spinoza, the philosopher, they grew out of that place. Many of those Jews, they ended up in the Ottoman, Salamanca. They went to the Ottomans. Many of them settled in Morocco. That's why you still have a large number of Jews still in Morocco, even after the creation of Israel. Some of them went to Tunisia. Now, what does this mean? 1492, for Islam in its relationship with the West, and for the West in its relationship with Islam, and what happened to Muslims in their own context, and what happened to the Latin Christians in their own context. The discovery of America changed the whole ballgame. Because when America was discovered, the Europeans, who were becoming increasingly overcrowded, remember you had the Black Death in the middle period, which almost wiped a large number of the European people. But by the time Columbus set sail for the New World, the population of Europe has increased. So you are beginning to have overcrowding in some places. And as a result of that discovery, the Spaniards were able to find new avenues for their people. With the end of the Crusades, you can't send them to the Middle East. That's one of the reasons why, if you look at the Arabs, you will find the differences in pigmentation among them, which is likely because of the Crusades. If you draw a line along the Mediterranean where you have the Arabs, you find that those Arabs who look more European, you will find them on the coast of the Mediterranean, now called Lebanon. You have Tyre, you have Jaffa, you have Haifa, you have Beirut, and you come down. Those Arabs, they look like Europeans because they are the descendants of the Crusaders who stay behind. And that's one of the reasons why in the Lebanese Civil War, some of those Lebanese Christians, they wanted to create their own Christian state. They still want to create a Christian state. This is what was happening at the time. Now, when Columbus moved out of Spain, the Spaniards were now able to accomplish a major achievement because they were now able to have access to gold, which was controlled by the Muslims. Because at the height of Muslim dominance, Europeans could not get spices without going through Muslims. They couldn't get silk without getting to Muslims. Remember Marco Polo, the Italian? He had to pass through Muslim lands and Mughal lands to go into China. So, because the Muslims controlled the gold mines, they controlled the silk trade, the ivory trade, the spice trade. With the exploration of the New World by Columbus, the Europeans were now able to find new lands